They called you too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too intense. They said it like it was a flaw, like the depth in you, the way you feel things all the way down to the bone, was something that needed to be fixed, something that needed to be dialed back, something that made you too hard to deal with. Chosen one, I need you to stop for a moment, because I want to say something to you that you have needed to hear for a long time. The people who told you that you were too much, they were not equipped for you. That is not an insult to them. It is simply the truth. You were not made for a level they were living at, and everything they called a flaw was actually a feature, a design choice made by someone far above their understanding. Think about the specific moments. You know exactly which ones I am talking about. The group chat where they laughed at something you said in sincerity. The moment you shared something real, something from the deep places, and you watched their faces go flat. The eye roll, the smirk exchange between them across the table when they thought you couldn't see. You saw it. You always see it. Because people like you notice things. You were built to notice. And what you noticed in that moment was this: I am being filed under too much. I am being measured against a standard I never agreed to. Or maybe it was not a group. Maybe it was one person who had access to the inside of your life, your thoughts, your dreams, your vulnerabilities, and they used that access to make you the problem. You are overreacting. Nobody else has an issue with this. You are always so dramatic. Why can't you just be normal? They rewrote the story. They made the wound about your response to the wound. They called your pain a performance. They called your depth a disorder. Chosen one, I want you to hear this clearly. They were wrong. Not just unkind wrong, factually, spiritually, cosmically wrong. Because here is what they did not know. Here is what they could not have known. Because only heaven had the full picture. Every time they dismissed you, God was watching. Every time they made you the problem, heaven was recording. Every time they said too much, God made a note, not in anger, not out of retaliation, but in the same way a father watches. When someone mistreats his child with a quiet, certain, unhurried knowing, this will be addressed, because here is the thing about what they called too much. God created exactly that much in you. He fashioned the depth. He designed the sensitivity. He built the emotional range that made them uncomfortable, because it was not designed for them. It was designed for what is coming next. You were not too much for your destiny. You were too much for your past. And God was separating the two. They thought they were dismissing you. They thought they were putting you in your place. They thought they won something the day they walked away, or the day they made you feel small enough to walk away yourself. But God said, watch this. He did not say it dramatically. He did not thunder it from heaven. He said it the way a craftsman says it, when he picks up a piece of raw material that someone else threw away and sees exactly what it will become. He said, watch this. And then he went to work, not to prove them wrong, though that became a byproduct, but to complete what he had already started in you. The dismissal did not derail the plan. The betrayal did not break the promise. The moment they decided you were too much was not the end of your story. It was the first sentence of a new chapter that they were never meant to be in. Chosen one, you are not reading this by accident. This word found you today because God is ready to speak over the season they said would break you, what they called rejection. God has already reclassified as redirection. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you about what has been happening behind the scenes, while you were healing, while you were wondering, while you were lying awake replaying their words, it will change everything you thought you knew about what those people did to you. God was not watching from a distance. He was building, and the building is almost done. I know what that season felt like, chosen one. I know what it is to have poured yourself into something, into a relationship, a community, a calling, and then to have the people in that space look at you like you were the disruption. You were not the disruption. You were the one who actually cared. And sometimes, in spaces that have stopped caring, the person who still cares becomes the most threatening presence in the room, not because they are dangerous, but because they are a mirror, and not everyone is ready to look at what the mirror shows them. So they deal with the mirror. They cloud it. They crack it. They put it in a corner. They tell everyone the mirror is broken. But here is what they do not understand about mirrors. A mirror does not stop being a mirror just because someone refuses to look into it. You have not stopped reflecting the truth. You have not stopped carrying the depth they couldn't handle. You have only been moved to a room where the people are ready for what you carry. And the room God is preparing, chosen one, is one they do not have a key to. They sealed themselves out the day they chose against you. Not through your bitterness, you released that. Not through your anger, you let that go too. But through the natural, irrevocable law that governs what happens when you reject what God assigned to you. God does not force anyone to stay in the presence of His chosen ones. He simply let them go. And then He waited for the harvest that always follows. When a seed is planted in correct soil, for the fruit that only grows, when the wrong roots are cut away, for the season that comes, when God says, "Watch this." You are in that season now, chosen one. You may not see it fully yet. The evidence may still be mostly invisible, but something has already been set in motion. Something was released the moment they made their choice. And in the next few minutes, I want to show you exactly what that something is and what it is doing to every single person who decided that you were too much to hold on to. There is a question you have been carrying. You may not have said it out loud. You may have been afraid of what it says about your faith if you let it surface, but it is there. It has been there since the moment it happened. The question is this: if God was watching, if God saw everything they did to you, why did He let it happen? Why did He not intervene? Why did He not stop it before it got that far? Why did the person who hurt you get to walk away without consequence? At least without any consequence you could see? Chosen one, I am not going to give you a soft answer. I am not going to hand you a platitude and call it theology. I am going to give you the honest answer, the one that takes faith to receive, the one that, once you understand it, will permanently change how you see everything that was done to you. God let it happen because He knew what it would produce, not because He approved of what they did, not because He was indifferent to your pain, not because the wound did not matter. He let it happen because He had already calculated what you're going through it, without breaking, without collapsing, without becoming what they accused you of, would cost. And He had already decided that the cost was worth what it would build in you. There was a man who understood this better than almost any writer in the last 100 years. His name was C.S. Lewis, Oxford scholar, Royal Air Force veteran, a man who lost his mother young, who was wounded in the trenches of the First World War, who gave his life to God as an intellectual who had argued himself out of faith and then argued himself back in. A man who knew what it was to sit in the wreckage of something he loved and ask, where was God in this? And in his book, The Problem of Pain, Lewis wrote something that stopped me cold. The first time I read it, he wrote, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. Read that again. He shouts, not whispers, not speaks, shouts. In your pain, in the specific pain they caused you, God was not quiet. God was at his loudest. But here is what most people miss when they read that line. They think the shout was directed only at them. They think God was shouting to the chosen one, trying to get their attention through the suffering. And yes, that is part of it. But there is another part. When someone harms what God has marked, when someone reaches out their hand against a person that heaven has specifically appointed, the shout travels in two directions. It shouts into the chosen one, "I am here. I am building. Hold on." And it sounds a warning across the spiritual atmosphere surrounding the one who did the harm. A warning they may not hear immediately. A warning they may not understand for weeks, months, years. But a warning that was sent because the scripture says it plainly. There is no ambiguity in this verse. Galatians chapter 6 verse 7. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Do not be deceived. God put that qualifier at the front because deception is possible here. Because from the outside, from where you were standing when they walked away, it looked like they got away with it. It looked like they got the easy path. It looked like they skipped consequence and moved straight into comfort. It looked like the universe had no accounting department. But God says, do not be deceived. There is an accounting department. It has been operating since before the world began, and the books are perfectly kept. The moment they chose against you, the moment they dismissed you, betrayed you, discarded you, an account was opened, not at the bank of your bitterness, not in the ledger of your anger, in heaven's own record. And into that account, every action they took against you became a deposit that earns interest, a deposit that grows silently in the background while they go on with their lives, seemingly unaware. They have been making deposits since the moment they hurt you, and heaven does not close accounts early. Chosen one, if you are hearing this right now, and something is rising in your spirit, a quiet certainty that you are not wrong, that what was done to you was seen, that justice is not just a concept, but an active, living force that is already working. I want you to do something. In the comments right now, type 3 words. Justice is mine, not as revenge, not as a declaration of what you want to do to them, but as a declaration of what God has already done. Justice is mine, not because I will take it, but because God has already claimed it on my behalf. Say it. Let heaven record your faith. Let those 3 words be your agreement with the account that has already been opened in your name. Justice is mine. Now let me show you something, chosen one, something that most people never get to see. Because most people leave the story right at the moment of the wound. They exit the narrative at the point of maximum pain, and they never get to watch what happens next. But you stayed. You kept going. You did not walk out of the story at the worst chapter. And because you stayed, because you are still here, you are about to see something that left only in pain could never have witnessed. You are about to see the boomerang return, not with noise, not with drama, not with a headline or an announcement, just with the quiet, precise, unmistakable arrival of what was sent the moment they made their choice. It is already in motion. It has been in motion this entire time. And in the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what it looks like when God's justice lands. There is something that was released into the atmosphere the moment they chose to hurt you. You did not throw it. You were too busy trying to survive what they did. You were too busy putting yourself back together. But something was thrown, and it has been traveling ever since. Quietly, without announcement, without a headline, without any of the noise that you might have expected. From a God who says He fights for his people. It has been traveling silently, the way a boomerang travels, arcing through the invisible space between what they did and what is coming back to meet them. And what I want you to understand today is this: the boomerang was not thrown by your anger. It was not sent by your prayers for justice. It was not even released by your grief. It was released at the exact moment they made their choice. The instant they decided to dismiss you, to weaponize your trust against you, to use your vulnerability as leverage. In that very instant, heaven answered, not in a way they could see, not in a way you could see, but in the way that the invisible world always answers. When someone lays their hand on what God has marked as his. Think back to the nights you lay awake. You know, the ones, the ceiling of your bedroom at 2 a.m., the phone in your hand, going over the conversation again, replaying the moment, trying to find the place where you went wrong, trying to understand how someone who knew you could do what they did. On those nights, while you were rebuilding yourself line by line, something was already happening on the other side of that choice. Not a dramatic collapse, not a lightning strike, just a quiet shifting, a slow rerouting. The kind of invisible restructuring that only becomes visible much later when you look back and realize things started changing for them. Right around the time they'd changed things for me, they did not connect those dots. People rarely do. But God was already working the mathematics of the law He placed into the universe. Before any of us arrived on this earth, you reap what you sow. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. There was a British scholar who spent years wrestling with the hardest questions of faith, questions about suffering, about justice, about why bad things seem to move through the world unchecked. And he arrived at something that sounds almost too simple, but carries the weight of a lifetime of thought. C.S. Lewis wrote this, and I want you to hold it carefully because it applies to them just as much as it applies to you. It may be hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It would be a jolly sight harder for it to learn to fly while remaining an egg. Read that again. While remaining an egg, chosen one. Here is the difference between you and the people who hurt you. You went through the breaking. You went through the season that cracked the shell open. You went through the process that felt like destruction, but was actually transformation. You came out on the other side of what they did to you. Different, deeper, capable of things the version of you before the breaking could not have managed. They stayed an egg. Same patterns, same choices, same circles of influence, same limited ceiling. They chose comfort over growth. They chose familiarity over truth. They chose to remain exactly as they were, and in doing so, they chose to remain exactly where they were. And here is the consequence of staying an egg. You cannot fly, no matter how much time passes, no matter how much they rearrange the external circumstances, no matter who they surround themselves with, or what new beginning they try to manufacture. An egg that refuses to break cannot learn to fly, while you, the one they dismissed, the one they decided was too difficult to hold on to, you broke, you cracked open, and now you are flying at altitudes they cannot reach. The boomerang does not need to punish them dramatically. It simply needs to deliver the natural consequence of the choice they made. And part of that consequence is this: they are still on the ground, looking up, watching what you have become. From a vantage point they sealed themselves into, the day they chose to let you go. The scripture says it this way, Romans chapter 8, verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. In all things, not in some things, not in the good things only, in all things. Which means In the betrayal, God was working for your good. In the dismissal, God was working for your good. In the rejection, God was working for your good. In the season when they made you feel like the problem, God was working for your good. And here is the other side of that coin, that most preachers do not say, if God works all things for the good of the one who was harmed, then what does He work for the one who did the harming? He works all things toward the conclusion of what they chose. Every seed produces after its own kind. They sowed what they sowed, and the harvest is coming up exactly as planted. They may not be facing it yet. They may appear, from where you stand, to be doing fine. Do not let appearances deceive you. The boomerang does not travel on a visible path. It does not send a notification. It does not schedule a meeting. It simply arrives, and when it does, it is precise. It is complete, and it lands exactly where it was sent. You do not need to track its flight, chosen one. You do not need to monitor their life, looking for signs of its arrival. You only need to know this: they have not escaped. They have simply not yet felt what is already on its way to them. And while we wait for that arrival, not with hunger, not with celebration, but with the quiet, settled trust of someone who knows the law of sowing and reaping is not suspended. Let me show you something even more specific. Let me show you what it actually looks like when the harvest of what they sowed begins to come up in their soil. Because it does not look like what you imagine. It never does. When most people think about karma, when they imagine what justice looks like for the people who hurt them, they picture something dramatic: a public collapse, a visible humiliation, a headline, a moment where everyone who witnessed what they did to you finally gets to see the scales balance in real time. A scene, a reckoning, something you could point to and say, there it is. God did not forget. But divine justice almost never works that way. And if you are waiting for the dramatic version, if you are scanning their social media for signs of collapse, watching for the visible fall, you may miss what is actually happening. Because God's justice is not theatrical, it is structural. It does not knock down the building in a moment. It removes the foundation quietly, one brick at a time, until the building that was built on wrong choices can no longer hold its own weight. And by the time the walls come down, the people watching from the outside will think it happened suddenly. But you will know, because you were there when the foundation started cracking. You were the corner they cut. You were the truth they chose to ignore. You were the relationship they decided was expendable. And when you build on ground you have made dishonest, the ground remembers. This is what karma actually looks like. Chosen one. Not lightning, not drama, just the slow, patient, mathematically precise erosion of everything that was built on the wrong foundation. Let me be specific, because you need to see this clearly. After they walked away from you, after they dismissed you, betrayed you, or discarded you, they tried to rebuild. That is what people do. They fill the space. They find replacements. They move into the next thing with the same energy they used to move out of you. And for a moment, maybe for a season, it seemed to work. They had new people, new dynamics, new scenes to post, new evidence that life goes on. But here is what they discovered. Not in the first month, not even necessarily in the first year, but eventually, quietly, unavoidably, what they had with you cannot be manufactured. The depth is not available in replacements. The specific frequency of trust they violated, the specific kind of space you created, does not exist off the shelf. They tried to recreate it. They went looking for someone who could give them what you gave, without requiring what you required, without the depth, without the accountability, without the mirror And they found people who said yes to that, but something felt hollow. The relationships felt shallower than they expected. The conversations did not go as deep. The loyalty they received was proportional to the loyalty they were willing to give. And since honesty was not something they had chosen, since integrity was not what they had practiced, the loyalty they received back was thin. The success they chased, even if it came, arrived with a strange flatness to it. Achievements that looked right from the outside, numbers that impressed, validation that came in abundance. And yet, at night, in the quiet moments when the performance stops, and the real interior of a person is all that remains, something did not add up. Something was missing. They could not name it easily. They were not even sure they would admit it. If someone asked, but it was there, the specific ache of having chosen wrong and not yet being willing to call it what it was. The scripture puts it this way, Proverbs chapter 26, verse 27. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. The pit they dug for you, chosen one, is the pit they are now standing in. Not because you pushed them, not because you engineered their consequence, but because that is the law. That is the architecture of a moral universe, designed by a God who does not overlook what is done to his marked ones. You climbed out of the pit they dug. It was painful. It took longer than you wanted. There were days at the bottom when you were not sure you could, but you climbed, and they, the ones who dug it, are now standing at the bottom, looking up at the light. They were so confident they did not need you to reach. This is not your punishment of them. This is not something you wished into existence. This is the stone rolling back, because that is what stones do when they are rolled with wrong intent. Chosen one, if you have made it this far into this message, if something in you is resonating right now, recognizing the truth of what I am describing, I want you to declare something, not in revenge, not in celebration of their struggle, but in simple, settled, grateful acknowledgement of what God has done for you. In the comments right now, type 3 words. I am elevated. Say it as a declaration of fact, not arrogance, not pride, not triumph over them, but the simple truth. I went through the pit they dug. I came out the other side, and God has placed me at a level that the bottom of that pit does not have access to. I am elevated. Type it. Let heaven register your testimony. Because chosen one, you need to hear what I am about to tell you. I have been describing what is happening to them. From the outside, their patterns, their hollow spaces, their pit. But I have not yet told you what is happening inside of them when they think about you. I have not yet told you about the regret that does not announce itself, the regret that does not send a message or make a phone call, the quiet, interior regret that settles into people when they realize they let go of something they cannot get back. That is what is forming in them right now, chosen one. And in the next part of this message, I am going to walk you directly into that interior so you can see it, so you can understand it, and so you can be free, completely, permanently free, from needing them to say it out loud. I want to take you somewhere uncomfortable for a moment, not to wound you, not to reopen anything, but to show you something that, if you are willing to look at it clearly, will set you free from the last thing you are still waiting for. I want to take you inside their world, not the version they perform for others, not the posts, the captions, the curated evidence that everything is fine and they made the right call. I want to take you to the unguarded moments, the ones that happen when the phone is face down and the room is quiet and there is no audience to perform composure for, because in those moments, something is forming in them that they have not yet named. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with the drama that you might expect from something this significant. It arrives the way most important things arrive, quietly. In the margins, in between other things, chosen one, they are already beginning to regret what they did to you. You may not believe that. You may have watched them move on with such apparent ease that the idea of them feeling anything resembling regret seems almost impossible. But here is what I know about the human interior. When you have been close to someone, when you've had access to who they actually are, not the performance, but the person, that knowledge does not disappear. It stays. It lives somewhere behind the new choices. It surfaces in specific, unpredictable moments. The moment they see your name in a context that has nothing to do with them, a mutual connection mentioning you, an algorithm surfacing something you created, a conversation where your name comes up naturally, and something in them goes very still, not in grief necessarily, not in overt longing, but in recognition, the quiet, interior recognition that says, I know that person, I knew that person deeply, and I chose to let that go. They scroll past. They keep the expression neutral. They say nothing. But the recognition does not go with the scroll. It stays. It settles. It becomes part of the background of their interior life, a low, persistent frequency that hums underneath the surface of their days. And when they hear about your season, when the evidence of what God is doing through you begins to become visible, something else is added to that frequency. Not just recognition, weight. The weight of understanding. What I discarded was more significant than I calculated. What I decided was not worth holding on to was exactly what I needed. What I called too much is now producing something I do not have access to. That is the regret, chosen one. Not a dramatic confession, not an apology that arrives at your door, just the quiet, accurate, growing recognition that they miscalculated. And the miscalculation has a cost that compounds daily. There was a man named C.S. Lewis who spent years thinking about what it means to go through deep suffering without being destroyed by it. And in The Problem of Pain, one of the most honest books ever written about why good people suffer, Lewis wrote this: God, who foresaw your tribulation, has specially armed you to go through it, not without pain, but without stain. Not without pain, but without stain. Chosen one. I need you to hear what Lewis is saying. God did not promise you that what they did would not hurt. It hurt. It was real. The pain was not exaggerated. The wound was not dramatic. It was simply real. But God foresaw it. Before you experienced it, God saw it coming. And He specifically, deliberately, intentionally armed you for it. Not because He approved of what they would do, but because He knew that the level of calling He had placed on your life required a version of you that only that fire could produce. And here is what the word stain means. You did not become what they accused you of. You did not turn into the bitter, broken, damaged person that what they did could have made you. You went through it clean. You came out the other side with your character intact, your faith still standing, your soul still oriented toward God. That is not nothing, chosen one. That is everything. Because what their regret is measuring itself against, the standard that makes their regret feel like weight, is exactly that. The fact that you survived it with grace, the fact that you did not collapse into what they did, the fact that you are still standing, and standing higher than when they first met you, that survival is the evidence they carry with them. Every time they think about you, every time the recognition surfaces, they are seeing a person who went through what they caused without being destroyed by it. And that sight, whether they admit it or not, is what produces the weight. The scripture puts it, with the authority of heaven itself. Isaiah chapter 54 verse 17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. No weapon, not most weapons, not the smaller ones, not the ones that miss vital organs. No weapon. What they aimed at you, the words, the choices, the abandonment, the deliberate decision to harm what God had placed. None of it prospered against you. You are still here. The weapon was formed. They formed it carefully. They used it with intention, but it did not prosper. And the evidence of that is you, right now, still standing, still seeking God, still in this message, because something in you refuses to believe the lie, that what they did was the final word. Chosen one, their regret is not your victory to claim. It is not something to broadcast. It is not information you need to verify. It is simply God's receipt, the delivery confirmation on the harvest that was always coming, not because you demanded it, but because the law of sowing and reaping does not require your involvement to operate. You do not need them to say it. You do not need the confession. You do not need the apology. Heaven has already seen to the accounting, and what I need to prepare you for in the next part of this message is the most important warning for this exact moment in your journey, because this is the moment where many chosen ones make the one mistake that can complicate what God has prepared. This is the moment where, having seen the boomerang return, having understood the regret that is forming, the temptation arrives. And if you are not warned about it, you may not recognize it until it is too late. I need to stop you here. Before we go any further, before I speak the final word over your life that this message is building toward, I need to put something in your hands that is more important than everything you have heard so far, because you have been through the journey. You have survived the wound. You have come through the breaking. You have watched the boomerang arc back. You have understood the regret forming in them. And now, right now, at this exact point in the story, the most dangerous temptation of your entire journey is going to show up, not in a disguise, not in something that looks obviously wrong. It is going to show up wearing the face of something that feels completely justified. The temptation to go back, not to reconcile, not to restore, but to revisit, to re-enter the space where it happened, physically, emotionally, digitally, and let them know, that you have seen what is happening to them, that you are aware of the harvest they are now sitting in, that you understand, finally, the full picture. And you want them to understand that you understand. The temptation to explain yourself one more time, to lay out the evidence, to show the receipts, to stand in the same space where they made you feel small and demonstrate conclusively, irrefutably, that they were wrong. Chosen one, do not do it. I am not saying this because you do not have the right. You do. Everything you have been through gives you every right to want that conversation. I am saying this because you have something far more valuable than the right. You have the result. And the moment you go back to argue your case to people who already feel the weight of having dismissed you, you interrupt the only testimony that actually matters. Because here is what they are experiencing right now: the silence of your character, the visible evidence of your elevation, the undeniable presence of someone who went through what they caused and came out without needing to say a word about it. That silence is the loudest thing in the room. The moment you break it to explain yourself, the moment you reach back into what they did and try to litigate it one more time, you give them something they do not currently have, a distraction. Right now, without your noise, they are left alone with the weight of what they chose. The moment you re-enter that space, the weight shifts. Now it is about your reaction to them, not their choice against you. Now you become the story, and they become the audience, and the conviction that was building quietly in them gets redirected outward. Do not give them that exit. And then there is the other temptation, the one that is slightly more subtle, but just as dangerous. The temptation to announce their fall, to use your platform, your voice, your space, your community, to point to what is happening to them, to create content that is really just thinly veiled commentary on the harvest they are receiving, to let people know, without quite saying it directly, that you have been vindicated, chosen one. This is the stain Lewis warned about. God armed you to go through this, not without pain, but without stain. The stain is not what they did to you. They did that, and God held you clean through it. The stain would be what you do at the moment of your vindication. The scripture is direct on this point. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 17. Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When they stumble, do not let your heart rejoice, not because they deserve your protection, not because what they did was not serious, but because your heart is not designed to carry the weight of gloating. Gloating is a weight. It feels like victory in the moment, but it anchors you to the past at the exact moment. God is trying to pull you into the future. You cannot gloat and move forward at the same time. You cannot be looking backward in celebration and walking forward into destiny simultaneously. The posture of gloating is a posture that faces the past, and what God has prepared for you is entirely and completely ahead. There is nothing behind you worth the turning, not their fall, not their regret, not the satisfaction of them seeing you in your elevation. God does not need you to supervise the harvest. He does not need you to confirm that the accounting is complete. He does not need your involvement in the consequences they are facing. He handled it. He is handling it. He will continue to handle it long after you have walked so far into your future that looking back would require you to stop moving forward. So here is the charge, chosen one. Walk forward, not in bitterness. You already released that, not in anger. That was not what carried you through, not in triumph over them, because what is waiting for you is so much larger than that small satisfaction. Walk forward in the simple, clean, settled freedom of someone who has been completely handled by the God who never missed a detail. The boomerang returned. The receipt was delivered. The harvest is coming up in their soil. Your job is not to audit any of it. Your job, the only thing left for you to do in this entire story, is to walk through the door that God has been building for you while justice was doing its quiet work. And that door, chosen one, is what I want to show you now, because it is real. It is open. It has your name on it. And no one, not the people who hurt you, not the ones who called you too much, not the ones who are now living in the harvest of what they chose. No one can shut it. Come with me. Let me show you what is on the other side. You made it here. That is not a small thing. Most people do not make it to the end of the message. Most people leave when the content gets heavy, when the truth starts pressing against something tender, and the instinct is to scroll away before it lands too deep. But you stayed, and I want you to know that the God who sent this word to you today saw you staying. He saw you choosing to receive something that cost something to receive, and what He has prepared for you at the end of this staying is the thing this entire message has been building toward. Not a formula, not a strategy, not 5 steps to your breakthrough, just this: a door, a real door, an open door, a door that was built specifically for you, while everything that needed to happen was happening. While they were making their choice, God was building the door. While the boomerang was in motion, God was building the door. While you were lying awake at 2 a.m., replaying what they did, God was building the door. And while you were healing, while you were letting go of the bitterness, releasing the need for them to understand, choosing again and again to trust a God whose justice you could not yet see, God was finishing the door, and now it is open. C.S. Lewis, the man who survived war, grief, doubt, and the long silence of God, the man who came out on the other side of all of it, with his faith not diminished but deepened, left us with this: there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. Far better, not slightly better, not marginally improved, far. The distance between where you were when they called you too much and where God is taking you is not a single step forward. It is a horizon that keeps moving as you walk toward it, not because it is retreating, but because the goodness of God is infinite enough to keep expanding as you keep advancing. What they represented, the relationship, the community, the place, was not your destination. It was a road you were on for a season, and the road ended there. Not because you failed, but because where you are going does not pass through where they are. Leave it, chosen one, not with anger, not with a final glance over your shoulder, but with the clean, forward-facing freedom of someone who has been told by the God of the universe, there are far better things ahead. Receive that. Let it settle in your chest. Let it rearrange the way you have been holding the story, because the story is not over. It is not even halfway through. And the chapter that is coming, the chapter that begins on the other side of the door, God has been building, is the chapter that makes every previous chapter make sense. The scripture puts it with a finality that leaves no room for doubt. Revelation chapter 3, verse 8. I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. An open door that no one can shut. Not the people who hurt you, they cannot shut it. Not the circumstances that delayed you, they cannot shut it. Not the enemy who orchestrated the pain, he cannot shut it. And notice what God says about who you were. When he placed this door before you, you have little strength. He is not saying you are strong. He is not saying you have it all together. He is not saying you have performed perfectly. He is saying, I saw you when you were barely holding on. I saw you when your faith was a thread. I saw you when the only thing keeping you in this was a decision you made in the dark to not give up. And I am giving you this door, not because you were impressive, but because you kept my word and did not deny my name. You kept coming back. You kept believing. You kept choosing God, even when the silence felt like abandonment. And exactly that is what the door is for. Chosen one, I want to speak something over you now. Receive this as a word from the one who placed you and planned you before you took your first breath. You were not too much. You were exactly right, exactly measured, exactly designed for what is coming next. The people who called you too much were not wrong about the intensity. They were wrong about the purpose of it. The depth in you is not a problem to be managed. It is a capacity for the weight of what God is about to place in your hands. The sensitivity they mocked is the very quality that will make you exceptional at the calling that is now opening before you. Every dimension of you that they dismissed, God designed it. He fashioned it. He put it in you on purpose. And now He's taking you to the place where it is not too much. It is exactly enough, exactly sufficient, exactly suited. Will you pray with me? Father, I release them. Every person who called me too much, every voice that told me I was the problem, every hand that was raised against what you had marked, I release them to your hands, not to their suffering, not to their consequence. Into your hands, you are more than capable of completing what you began in their lives. Without my supervision, I release the wound. I release the need for them to understand. I release the desire for an apology that may never come. I receive instead the open door. I receive the word you have spoken over me today. I receive the truth that what was done to me did not undo what you began in me. I am still here. I am still standing. I am still walking toward the far better things that are ahead. Lead me through the door, Lord. I am ready. Amen. Chosen one, you are already free. You have been free since the moment God opened an account in your name and took the case into his own hands. You do not need to carry this anymore. The boomerang returned. The receipt was delivered. The door is open. Walk through it. Do not turn around. What is ahead of you, on the other side of everything they tried to take from you, is more than you have yet imagined. And this channel will be here to walk with you through every step. Subscribe right now, chosen one. Turn on the notifications, because the God who opened the door for you today is not finished speaking, and what he has to say next is going to be exactly what you need for the season you are walking into. The next message is already prepared, and it is meant for you.